Hello friends, in this video, I will cover how you go about acing the interview question, which is walk me through your resume. Now, first and foremost, before we even talk about how you should go about acing it, what are the tips and hacks to just rock the answer for this question, we need to understand why is the interviewer asking this open-ended question. One is simple, they want to understand your ability to handle an open-ended question. Second is your ability to tell a story. Third is your ability to sift through key information and how you communicate that key information to them. And lastly, for them to know what are the key highlights in your career. And there's one more, which is maybe during the time you're presenting or walking them through your resume, they may want to get more into details for a certain area or certain part of your resume that you've talked, and hence that way they can ask questions from the information that you have shared. So just for them to get more familiar with regards to what you've done, and then probe or ask question about a particular or a specific area. Now, second part is, how is this question different from tell me about yourself? It is a very different question. In tell me about yourself, you have more room with regards to what you share about yourself, and not just everything that is on the resume, but you can talk more about yourself, your personality, your character, your hobbies, your liking, your passion. However, when it comes to talking about your resume only or things that are on your resume, in that case, you would limit yourself more to the professional side of your career as against talking about your personal side. I have made a separate video on tell me about yourself where I explain in detail how you can go about acing that question. Because in that question, it is important that you bring out your personality as well, your liking as well, who you are as a person. While when talking about your resume, it is more geared and specific with regards to your profession, your achievements, your accomplishments. So limit your answer to your professional side as against talking about your personal side. However, when the question is about tell me about yourself, that is when you can sway and also bring in your personality. As I said, I made a separate video on this. You can check out the video using the link here. Now, one call out before we move forward. In case you find any value from this video, I have two asks for you. One, press the like button as this keeps me motivated. Second, press the subscribe button along with the bell icon so you get notified as soon as I put a new content on this channel. On this channel, I post content pertaining to financial and career success for early and mid-career professionals. Other than that, in case you want me to continue making unbiased content like this, you can support me on my Patreon page. I will leave the link to my Patreon page in the description of this video. Now let's get rolling back into the video. Now there is a benefit to you as well as an interviewee when this question is asked. What are those benefits? Number one is this is the first question, or normally this is the first question that the interviewer would be asking you. So you can use this question to set the tone of the interview. If you really ace this question, and how do you ace this question? I will talk in detail, share the tips and tricks. But imagine if you are able to ace this question, you will set the interview at a very high tone or high note starting as it starts. And hence you can take that high note and then keep it high for the rest of the interview. Second, you are able to highlight your key achievements, your key accomplishments, which are relevant for the job. Number three, if there are any resume gaps, you can talk about them as well. You can explain them why there were resume gaps. So it doesn't raise a red flag. Like you can address any red flag that is already on your resume. Before them asking, you can be proactive and talk about those resume gaps directly and proactively with the interviewer. And lastly, and more importantly, you also have a leeway to talk about stuff which is not on your resume. I know, although the question is tell me or walk me through your resume, which is everything on your resume. However, once you've spoken everything that is on your resume, you can always add more flavor by talking about things which are not on your resume. However, they are complementary to the job. They show your passion for the job you're applying for. They show that you have extra skills or additional skills or capability and ability to perform the role or the job you're interviewing for. So you get all this leverage when they allow you to talk about things which are on your resume. Again, as I said, although it seems that you need to limit yourself to the resume, but of course, towards the end of the answer, you can always expand and talk about other relevant things which might not be on your resume. However, they're very important for the job. So use this opportunity to present all of that. Now, before we go into the tips and hacks to ace this question, let's talk about the mistakes that you need to avoid. One, make sure it's not a boring and long-winded answer, which takes like minutes and minutes and minutes. And when I say minutes, it should be wrapped up in 2 to 3 minutes. Max 4-minute answer. What I mean is it should be less than 5. If you go beyond 5 minutes, you have two issues. One, you're taking a lot of time from the interview itself because there might be some good questions that the interviewer wanted to ask you, and you could have used those questions to elaborate more with regards to how you're fit for the job. But since you expanded on your resume so much that it took almost all the time that you had for the interview, and now the interviewer doesn't have much time left to ask you the relevant and most important questions, and they end up wrapping the interview without even knowing you as a person. And if they don't know you well, they won't hire you. Second important part is to make sure you read through your resume, not once, not twice, but thrice or even more. Read every word on it. For instance, for most part, people update their resumes every 6 months, every year, which means there might be stuff on your resume which may be kind of outdated, not relevant, or something you may have forgotten about. Imagine if you start talking through your resume and suddenly the interviewer probes on something that you may have missed and that is on your resume and not talked about, and now kind of that may have raised a red flag, and suddenly you forgot that part was on your resume because you've not read through it before. So make sure you've read through your resume, because if there is any probing question that comes as a follow-up, you're ready to address it. This is your resume. This is your document that you should know by heart. So make sure before you go in the interview, you've read every bullet, every part of the resume. Last but not the least, practice. Practice what? Practice an answer to this question using the tips that will follow. Make sure you use those tips to create a strong answer for this question. And when this question comes, just share that answer that you've practiced. But make sure you go prepared and you have practiced this answer. Now, when I talk about practice and preparing for this question, the most important element is that you read through the job description. So you understand what the job is looking for, what kind of skills are they looking for, what kind of experience are they looking for. In that way, you will exactly know what to highlight from your resume. What are the elements that you should be talking to the interviewer from your resume? Because you just don't want to talk about everything that is on your resume. It's a long resume. If you start reading your resume, it will take more than 5 minutes. So you only want to highlight key, most relevant stuff. And how do you find the most relevant stuff? Is when you understand what is the job description asking, what are they looking for. And once you know that, you can laser focus exactly on those elements. Also, I want to mention here that in case you're interested in having a one-to-one coaching session with me, could be a mock interview, could be a coaching session for interview, could be any question that you want to ask me, you can book my time using the link that I will leave in the description of this video. Now, tip number 1 is to make sure that you are a good fit for the role that you have applied for. Now, how do you do that? One is obviously you will be talking them through the resume, so you will be highlighting all the key achievements and stuff which are relevant for the job. But more importantly, as part of tip 1, you need to make sure that there is a summary of your profile. And that summary of the profile should match the job requirement itself. So let's say the job requirement is about e-commerce or digital marketing. Let's say it's digital marketing. Then when you start, you give a summary of who you are or what your profession or experience is. And you can say, my experience for past X number of years has been primarily in digital marketing, which has included things like search marketing and display marketing, which I've done across consumer good companies or whatever companies you worked on in XYZ market. So this is kind of a big picture highlight of who you are or what your profession is. And it should ideally match the title of the role you're applying for. Let's take another example. You're applying for a role which includes, let's say, pricing and portfolio management. And what you need to do is when you start your resume or when you start talking about your resume, you can go like saying that my experience has primarily been in finance, in CPG, where I have worked for the most part in pricing management and in portfolio development and portfolio management. Now, this is exactly the role that the individual who is interviewing you is looking for. So they go like, okay, this is the right guy because he has pricing and portfolio on his resume, and plus this is like the summary of his resume, the summary of his work. So this is exactly the person I'm looking for. Now, of course, you should have tailored your resume slightly or as much as possible to look suitable for the job you're applying for. So for instance, if it's a pricing and portfolio job, your resume should talk about the pricing and portfolio projects in it. And hence, that is only way you can summarize your resume as you working in finance and have worked on pricing and portfolio projects, allowing the interviewer to know that you're the right guy, because this is exactly what they're looking for. They're looking for a pricing manager and a portfolio manager, and you've done this throughout your career. So you need to give that highlight, that summary of your resume before you even start talking or walking them through your resume. Now, second important tip is to tell a story. As I said in the beginning, that the interviewer is also evaluating your communication skills. It is very important you tell a story when you talk through your resume. Now, what do I mean by story? By story, I mean there should be a thread that you are following. There should be storytelling versus just throwing facts. Why? Because facts is difficult to remember facts, but it's very easy to remember a story. Second, it is difficult to follow the facts or organize the facts. They are coming in different wavelength. But the story is very easy to organize because it's already organized by you. So the interviewer doesn't have to put any brain energy in organizing all those facts. One of the easy way to tell a story is use an order where you start from your oldest job or oldest part in your resume and then move to your recent part. Here, one of the most advisable way to tell a story is using a chronological flow where you start with your oldest job or role and move to your recent job, project or role. Here comes tip number 3, which is it is smart when you're telling a story, you break your resume into buckets. Now, what I mean by buckets, they could be different companies you worked for. So for instance, you worked 2 years for one company, another 3 years for another company, and then 2 years for another company. These are 3 buckets. So instead of talking about each of the roles, you talk about those buckets. You say, I worked in X company and this is what I did. Then I moved to this company, this is what I did. And then I moved to this company and this is what I did. Another piece could be you just talking about different projects that you worked on or different major roles that you worked on. But make sure you break them into buckets, and they should not be like 5 or 10 buckets. Ideally, they should be like 3 or 4 buckets that you can talk and cover in those 3 minutes that you are using to talk or walk them through your resume. So make sure you have buckets and you move from the oldest bucket to the recent bucket and jump in bucket form, because the resume can have like 10 roles on them. You don't want to talk them through each of the role. Rather, club those roles or projects into those buckets which you can talk to them. So again, it is easy for them to grasp. It is not a lot of information. The idea is when you're sharing 10 facts or 10 things that are on your resume, it will be very difficult for them to remember. But imagine if you can club and summarize those 10 things that are on your resume into 3 key highlights, it will be very easy for them to remember and relate to. The next tip is to focus on the most relevant info. Your resume have a lot of information on there, a lot of roles that you may have done in past, but not all roles may be relevant for the job or the role that you are applying for, or not all the projects that you've worked may be relevant for the job that you have applied for or how the interviewer is evaluating you. So make sure you only highlight the projects which are most relevant for the job you are applying for. That may simply mean that you would be missing a lot of stuff on your resume and may not talk about them, and it is completely fine. You just need to talk about the key highlights which are most important. And here another important thing is make sure you put the most focus or most highlight on your recent job as against the older ones. So once you start in the order where you start with the oldest role or oldest job and move to the newest one, move faster, skim faster through the initial period, and then slow down as you move towards the recent role, because this is where you need to expand more and talk more. Now, next tip is that under each of the buckets that you've created in your resume or in the flow of your resume, you have like 3 highlights under each bucket that you can call out. Again, the highlights that are relevant for the job you're applying for. Again, this makes it very easy. Imagine you have like 3 buckets and then you have 3 highlights in each one of them. Let me just take you through an example. What I would usually talk is I started my career in Pakistan with Procter & Gamble, where I worked in finance. And during that time, I was there for 5 years in Pakistan and I worked on pricing strategy, I worked on equity injection, and I worked on distributor transition. These were like the key highlights of my time in Pakistan with Procter & Gamble. Assuming these were the 3 highlights also which are relevant for the job I'm applying for. Then I moved to Middle East with Procter & Gamble, where I worked on India hair care growth strategy, Middle East cost optimization, and Middle East hair care share growth plan. Again, just giving 3 highlights from the second bucket. And then I moved and immigrated to Canada, where I joined Lego. And Lego, I worked on channel strategy, on pricing strategy, and on establishing the e-commerce setup for Lego Americas. Again, 3 highlights under the third bucket as well, and so on and so forth. So the idea is have those 3 buckets, and under each of these buckets, you should have like 3 highlights you should call out, which are your key accomplishment, and they are also relevant to the job you're applying for. So for the interviewer, it becomes very easy, right? Even if they've read your resume and they're like, a lot of information is on the resume, I couldn't really find things I'm looking for, and you just made it very easy for them. You just told them your resume can be divided into 3 parts, and under each of these parts, these are the key elements you've worked on, which are so relevant for the job that the interviewer goes like, this is exactly what I was looking for. Was not able to find it in the resume exactly the way this person is speaking, and now he just made my job easy. And hence, this is the person I am ready to move forward in the hiring process. Now, another important part is to also highlight skills. This might be relevant for some jobs where they're requiring some hard skill, let's say SAP, or as I said, pricing. Have you managed pricing systems? Again, this might be written in the job description itself, and hence it is very important that you come prepared reading the job description, because you need to know that what is in the job description that you need to talk about or you need to highlight in your resume. So whatever is called out in the job description, you need to find it on your resume and then exactly talk about that. So for instance, if the job description is requiring certain skills, let's say CPA qualification, or requiring you to have pricing system understanding or SAP understanding, Power BI, or any other big project or big task, could be mergers and acquisitions, which is kind of laid out in the job description. So when you are talking through or your resume and taking them or walking them through your resume, you need to call out those skills as well, either as part of those 3 buckets, or maybe in the end you can just summarize saying, I've also have done trainings or have skills or have expertise in these particular things or these particular areas, which I believe are also relevant for you. And hence, given I have those skills, I believe I would be a strong asset for the role that I'm applying for and in your company. Now, the last step is when you close on this question, you just not end by sharing those key highlights in your resume, but you also expand more and talk about what are your career aspirations. What are you looking for the job that you are applying for? Why are you applying for this job? And what are the challenges that you are looking for? The idea here is that you make use of this question to not just answer what the interviewer is looking for, but also expand into what opportunities you can bring as well. What are the things that you are passionate about, and how you can be an asset more than what is written in your resume, what is in your profession, what is in your work experience. More than that is your passion. You're willing to look for new challenges or the kind of challenges that the new job is providing, and relate it through your experience. So for instance, talking about pricing and portfolio management, you can always talk about that you have experience for pricing and portfolio management, and you want to continue expanding in this particular area, or you want to apply the same knowledge that you've gathered from your previous companies in pricing and portfolio management into some different business, into some different category, into some different market, which the new job is about. Maybe there are different business versus what you've previously worked on. There are different category, and hence you can say you have all these skills and you're looking for a new challenge where you can use these skills that you've used or gained in your past experience and apply them in a new category, in a new setup, in a new company. This way, you kind of not just talk about your past, but also talk about or paint a future for yourself and make the interviewer see yourself or see you working in that future and succeeding in that future, given all the skills that you have in past. So take the interviewer not just into your past, but also in the future. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully this video will now help you ace this question, which is walk me through your resume. In case you found this video helpful, I'm sure you'll find another video on my channel very useful where I talk about how you go about writing a winning resume. You can check out that video here. Other than that, I have another video on my channel which is one of the most commonly asked questions in an interview, which is tell me about a time when you failed. You can check out that video here. Thank you.